Hello, time for another Leela Chess Zero update and another little look into how this new chess engine, open source artificial intelligence, is doing. We've had a couple more versions and it's been getting stronger. You can see, actually, can you see my? No, you can't. Okay, over this second to last blue dot on that line there, that's the strongest one yet. It's been going up basically, and then about an hour ago, the most recent network came out and is very slightly less strong, but that was with a small sample size, and it's kind of statistically negligible. So it's been improving in general, and I wanted to dig into a few particular games to show you the difference between the types of matches that types of games that are being produced by Leela Chess Zero as it is developed. So, if we go over here, I've prepared a couple of examples. So, first of all, this is from Match 64. So this is the strongest version of the network so far. And I picked out one of the games which this new version of it of Leela won. So you can see what it's doing. And in this case, in the match games, it's not learning, it's just testing itself against its most recent accepted version. So it's testing whether it's improved at all or not. It's just having a look at what the progress is. So this is the kind of match that produces those blue dots on this screen, or those red triangles if the network doesn't go very well. But these blue dots represent these matches. So this is strongest Leela playing the second strongest Leela, or one of the other strongest Leelas. So let's look at what kind of chess is played by Leela when she's doing her best. Start with King's Pawn opening, and at the moment, Leela likes the Philidor defense. That's its choice of defense. I think on the Alpha Zero paper, then it liked the French defense for quite a while as black, and then eventually gave up and went to some fairly mainline e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6 kind of lines. I think it ended up playing the Berlin. So top level chess theory. It sort of gave a bit of a nod in its direction. Anyway, Philidor, and it goes for standard kind of open Philidor. So just clicking through a few moves here, and we've got g3 for a fianchetto. This, as I put in the note there, is one of the strongest GM moves according to the Leela Chess Masters database. It's the second most. Actually, we can get it open up here, can't we? You'll see it's the second most played. I'll go back one move. It's the second most played move, g3 here. We're sixth move into the opening, and it's playing some pretty solid chess theory according to grandmasters of chess already. So it goes for the fianchetto variation and continues along this line. Natural kind of moves that you can well understand humans playing, and it's at this point that with the knight de2 move that it becomes just in line with this one game in the Leela Chess database. Two players who I've not heard of because I'm not that well known, back in 2004, which white won with this retreating knight to e2. And then after knight e5, then we're playing a completely fresh game that's never been played before. So let's see what happens. f4, knight c6, h3, and bishop c8. This retreat to c8 seems a little bit odd in a way. You might think, well, Stockfish prefers to go to d7. I guess that's fair enough. Doesn't look particularly active there. The other option would be e6, but after b3, white has blocked off the two kind of squares that bishop could influence anyway, naturally being able to develop the bishop down to b2 on a nice diagonal there's no real point in having it here on e6. So in this case, the older version of Leela decides to send it all the way back to c8. So we have a few more moves here. Again, fairly natural. And the older Leela brings in knight b4, and it gets pushed back here. Now there's an option here, and Stockfish likes to do b4, which cuts off this square here, and the knight's only future then is to head all the way back to b8, which is very sorry. But Leela Chess doesn't go for this. Leela goes to centralise that knight, get it in a bit of use, which allows the other Leela to bring the knight back over to here. And again, white pushes a pawn and pushes that knight, but in this case, unlike the other, it can jump into a4. So it's a knight on the rim, looking a little bit dim, but it may be a little bit better than back on b8. But in this case, white has control of f5 here, which stops this bishop getting potentially active, I guess. I haven't looked through whether that's really possible or not, but so it's chosen to have the bishop not able to do much back on c8 and have the knight over here, rather than the possibility of pushing the knight back to there earlier. Okay, so g4. Now, again, Leela, I don't think has really learnt much about king safety yet. I think this is because she's not very good at tactics yet, not good at finding quick mates, as you see from looking at some of the end games. And so she doesn't see all of the possibilities of getting checkmated so easily, and therefore overvalues moves with the pawns in front of the king or bringing the king out to the middle of the board. I think that's what's going on. She can't find the tactics herself, so she doesn't worry about them. Okay, so we've just got a few more moves here. Relatively sensible looking moves. So we'll just go through these. Pushing pawns, trying to open up the king. She seems to understand that it's a good idea to push pawns and try and attack a king, but not so much worry about her own king. Very natural, except at this point, well, I say very natural. I mean, they look like human moves, even if they're reckless. At this point, Stockfish thinks that Black's got an advantage with that pawn. So take that for what you think. I mean, Stockfish 9 is certainly a lot better than these engines, so we'll take it as read that that's right. c4 was played here. I just wondered about the possibility of playing bishop takes here. I think that's what Stockfish likes. Yeah, Stockfish likes bishop g5 here. Queen takes, but it's still not very nice. You've got these possibilities of this pinned bishop, this bishop coming in here and attacking, this queen potentially not being able to do very much. So the rook comes up, bishop d7, rook f1, bishop a8. I mean, it looks like a fairly reasonable, ordinary-ish game, apart from the fact that this king is so exposed, which I guess is what Stockfish is giving it the negative evaluation for. But we didn't get that. We got c4. And let's just look through a few more moves. This is quite a nice move. Rook a2, getting off the diagonal of the bishop, potentially coming over to f2. Seemed like a neat human kind of move. Knight b6. Let's keep looking through these. This is a kind of move that doesn't really achieve anything again. Just to check. King goes over there, unless it's going to be followed up with some other tactic. It's not really doing much. In fact, it loses about a pawn evaluation according to Stockfish because it's not doing enough with its move. So the bishop comes back to f5, and now there's, if you remember, before this bishop capture, before this bishop move here, this pawn captured pawn b4. So this whole maneuver means that white hasn't been able to recapture that pawn, which eventually leads to. Actually, sorry, it's in the Stockfish version. The Stockfish version here, it just grabs. Sorry, instead of playing rook, over here, then it prefers to take on a3 and goes through through this, and it just says, "Hey, look, I'm some material up. I quite like this." And if you try and do this continuation, you'll see basically the material's even, except the white kings not very good, and except the fact that the material isn't even, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black pawns and only 3 white pawns. Green pawns? What am I talking about? So Stockfish just likes the material, basically. Anyway, we didn't get that. Bishop c8, and this kind of stuff. Just click through a few more moves. In fact, let's just look at what the Stockfish evaluation here is. It's half a pawn for white or so, just a little edge. But you'll see that Leela doesn't really do well in these tactical kind of positions where things happen quickly. In fact, Stockfish has decided it's actually more like 0.1, so not much. And instead, Leela plays b5, which isn't, I'd say, really very human, because it just seems to be, and what's really doing, it's just opening up this rook. Really, if you just take it, it doesn't seem to really help white at all to push here. So this happens, and now there are tactics. In fact, really horrible tactics for black here. In the game, played knight d7, but actually you've got this quite nice tactic, quite a long one. Bishop takes here, queen takes, rook takes, giving up the exchange, you think, except for the fact that queen g5 comes in, forks king and rook. But that didn't happen, and we got this sequence of moves where white swaps off a few pieces, but it gets to a nice position in a moment where it plays a really lovely move. So look forward to that. Okay, and it's here. Really, really lovely. Oh no, not quite here. b7 first. King comes to g7, and now bishop comes into e3. And this is really nice. It's basically stopping this rook from coming over here to defend the b8 square. And this bishop is blocked by the knight, so it can't come in and control that square on b8. And so white has the opportunity now to force the promotion and some material gains. Black pushes the knight the way it thinks, except it doesn't. King comes and attacks the rook and wins the exchange there, but still there's nothing black can do about stopping b8 equals queen. You see the rook comes up to c8, and there's no way of controlling b8 anymore. And Leela queens that pawn, and it doesn't really matter that it's playing around a little bit, loses a rook, but gets checkmate soon enough. Yeah, the kind of play that maybe a grandmaster would do at Bullet, with lots of pre-moves, pre-move captures and things like that, in time trouble, but kind of getting the job done. So better own game play than many. But I really like that move, bishop e3. Just wins the game basically at this point, because it just enforces that capture. Sorry, that promotion on b8. So that gives you the sense of what it plays like in these matched games, what Leela does in these matched games, where it's playing its strongest version against its most recent version, apart from that one. It's got lots of good positional ideas. It plays really quite human-looking chess most of the time, but it does just miss things completely, and that's what's really hurting its strength against engines, where engines just see one of these tactics, like like this bishop e3, but even more so stuff like here, where it could take on d4, and this forced variation, which just wins too much material. Any decent engine spots that, because it's looking at so many different positions. It spots, oh, hang on, with this variation I win, basically win a piece, which is enough to win the game. So that's what it's doing in its matched games, in these strongest games. let's just spend a little bit of time looking at what it does in its self-play. So this is its training game. And in its training games, what it does is it plays, as far as I understand, it plays its strongest version, except that it adds lots of extra randomness into the moves it chooses. So instead of playing its strongest stuff, then it just plays a few mad moves from time to time. So in this case, e4, e6 looks like a French defense, knight c3, a little bit odd, and then g6. This is a novelty according to the Leela Chess Masters database. This hasn't been played by any top level player that's in that database. If we let's just see if anyone's played it on Leela Chess at all. Yep, actually quite a lot. There you go. But white tends to win, apart from if they play bishop c4. Some pretty good players there playing. Jaffa Cakes lost. Jaffa Cakes lost in this line. Okay, well, never mind. Let's close that down again. So the point of this one isn't to really look at the game, but I mean, this is a bit of an odd move. You could aim for this kind of setup I'm talking about, and the computer sort of does in a way, but you know, this has clearly been introduced by a random element rather than it playing its strength, its full strength. So we're just going to go through the game fairly quickly. It still generally looks a bit human, like it responds to that attack on the knight and it goes, where shall I put it? Well, I can move it forward and I can attack that pawn, so why not do that? You know, it plays some relatively sensible looking moves, but then it'll play some totally mad moves. Just moved its bishop to g7, then back to f8. This looks like human-ish maybe, but quite a lot lower strength, you can tell. But the point of all this randomness is because the neural network wants to know if there's anything, any kind of tactical idea that it's missed so far, and the only way it can introduce that is by adding an element of randomness and then spotting that in certain situations that this particular concept exists. That's how it gets stronger in the long run, although it makes random moves along the way. Okay, so f6, a bit weird. Let's keep on going through this fairly quickly because we all have other things to do, I'm sure. I, in particular, have to go to bed. And look, I mean, it's been fairly random moves up to now, and we've got a 0.1 evaluation. It's an odd opening, but they've both played fairly evenly so far. But soon we get a blunder here of just silly proportions. And here it is, knight b4. Just moves the knight forward and just can be taken. It's just that simple. So that's almost certainly just a random move that's come in there, just to test whether this idea works. And of course, it doesn't. But you know, it's not totally random. Look, the bishop then attacks a rook down here, and white responds, blocks it off, attacks the bishop back. They swap off. So you know, it's still playing an okay strength. It just adds some extra weird moves in there. Okay, queen takes. This is quite an interesting point because this knight is hanging. The knight is completely hanging, and you know, most humans at this point would go, oh well, better move the knight here, or maybe move the rook here, set up a discovery on it. Quite normal. But just like Stockfish suggests, Leela recognises Queen h6 is a neat move here, with ideas of this knight coming here, threatening a mate up here, which then black has to lose a load of material. It's quite a nice little variation. So imagine you take the queen instead, take the knight, don't do anything about this. You get this kind of continuation where you're in an exchange and a pawn, swap off a pawn, and now you're bringing these other pieces into the game down here, but bishop comes in with a check. This knight's defended by the queen, so you can't take it straight away. But you're slowly bringing up the pressure on the king, winning material, and it's going to be cat and happen soon. Mate in 3 at this point. But you can see it's clearly 1 for white. Anyway, we didn't get that because it didn't happen. Why didn't that happen? Well, it just played some other moves, basically. It played that nice human-looking move of knight c4 from before. And jumps in knight into the square instead. Anyway, it's still winning quite clearly. But we're going to move around, again, a random move like h4 here. Again, Son Williams, very proud of Leela at this point. And here, this is a bit sad. So white in control of masses. Simple move bishop f3 is winning here, uncovering the attack on the queen, also attacking here, but also the bishop is still defending this knight. Unfortunately, played bishop d3 instead and allowed the queen to take the knight. And so it goes from winning to losing position, or at least a poor position. And has to kind of go all passive, swap off queens, swap off rooks. But it gets into a not great, but okay kind of end game here. It's still got chances here, you'd think. Shoves around a little bit. You know, this isn't nice for white, but you think maybe it'll hold. And we get to this point, and then this move for poor Leela. Well, they're both Leela, let's be honest. They just plays king f1. It's just a really random move, and this really shows you the random element of this engine and the way that it has to play in self-play. Because it has to test these moves out and see if they work. It's the way that the engine grows. And it will notice fairly quickly here that this is no good. Or you'd think so. Because knight d2 comes in, for king and rook. Knight takes, and at this point white kind of gives up. It kind of gives up, but look, it plays this lovely positional move. Knight, bishop b5, you know, putting the bishop in this relation to the knight where it kind of cuts off lots of its squares. Just a lovely little positional move. Totally lost, totally pointless in this position, but you think that it's probably put the bishop there because it's noticed. It's useful putting a bishop 3 squares away from a knight like that. Ends up getting itself up, but then look, black blunders back, just gives away a rook. Why not? Who cares? Still winning according to Stockfish. Still got a knight and 2 pawns against the pawn. Here we go. For some reason, here we go. Black doesn't just take the pawn, and we're left with a pawn and knight versus king endgame. You think, oh, well, it's only the pawn. You know, if that pawn gets lost, then it's going to be a draw, insufficient material. But in this case, Leela doesn't make the mistake, and I'll just kind of quickly put it on to the end. I mean, random endgame play, but it roughly seems to understand it needs to get its king forward, needs to push the pawn forward. White is not understanding that it needs to protect against the pawn, not go chasing after the knight. Keeps on chasing the knight, and ends up in this weird position. Black eventually pushes the pawn, gets a queen, and with a bit of poor technique, eventually misses a mate in 1, and then misses another mate in 1, and then it finally finds it. So yeah, not great endgame technique again. This is still very much the case with Leela. It'll be interesting to see over the coming weeks how quickly it kind of improves at these kinds of simple positions. But there we go. So that's the difference between Leela playing match games, where it's playing at its full strength, and playing its learning games, where it's just trying to find and spot new patterns that seem to work for it. So I hope that's been helpful. Hope that's interesting to you. And I've got another idea for another video lined up. The next one that I've got planned is from a recent game between Leela and Stockfish. Not Stockfish again, not Stockfish at its strongest. Let me just double check it. It's this game here. What strength is it? Oh, it's not on this one. Bear with me a second. Okay, here we go. So Stockfish 9 on a 64-bit computer. There's a particular version, and it's on level 8, which it's supposed to be, 1940 or so. So I've basically found 2 games that someone made between this version of Stockfish, this level of Stockfish, which is nowhere near the strongest, not supposed to be near the strongest, playing against the strongest Leela so far, and 1 game in which Leela wins and 1 game in which Leela loses. So that's what we'll hopefully do next time. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's something you want me to cover about Leela, explain, or anything like that, and I'll do my best. But hopefully that's useful, and let me know if you like it, or subscribe, or tell me if you hate it. Tell me if I messed something up again. All thoughts gratefully received. Thank you very much.